Well, it's two whole separate approaches to epistemology. We're completely dumbfounded because we don't know how to talk to these people because we're assuming that people we talk to are going to have that sort of empiricist modern approach to knowledge and debate. But when we're dealing with people that are basing their ideology in critical theory, which is basically a subset of postmodern ideology, where truth is sort of relative based on power structures and embedded in language, and no one has access to the truth completely. This It's a whole different ball game, and
Right.
so it's hard to to bridge the two because I need to attack these beliefs and their arguments, if you can call them arguments, from sort of these varied perspectives, because I need to be able to appeal to the postmodernists and the modernists so everyone can understand what I'm trying to point out to here.
Hmm.
It's really difficult to thread that needle.
What's interesting about this? It goes. There's a professor that I've worked with named Greg Enriquez in James Madison University in Virginia, and he talks about the the bridging of consciousness into this new digital domain. And there's another one that I have talked to, but not on video at this point, which is Kurt Doolittle, and it's like the transformation of human consciousness from an analog perspective to the new digital perspective. And Doolittle says that and I think it's good, which is the standard of knowledge in the analog age was reasonability. But in the digital age, we are beyond that reasonability because of the intersubjective differences were not accounted for in the post-enlightenment or enlightenment thinking. And the intersubjective differences is what Doolittle attempts to account for by his calculability, which is the standard of epistemology in the digital age. And he's done some interesting work, which is related to how do you compare apples and oranges between subjects. And it's like, that's I think where we need to go. And it's like, but I no, I don't regard it as a fair playing field because I see vested interests of the various social institutions seeking to gain advantage and use the levers of power to push the dominoes in such a manner as is biased in their own favor, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a scientist, it's just I'm committed to that. Uh, that there is that shared reality out there, and it's any other scientist can perform your same experiment and come to the same conclusion. Even a robot should be able to do it, or a really intelligent alien who's able to perform the experiment. They could come to these same conclusions. Um, but when your ideology, when your investigations are first and foremost going to be informed by power dynamics, by standpoint epistemology, whereas your views gain validity just based on who you are relative to others, which is purely subjective. You just can't go anywhere with that, because the second you get someone else from their same demographic who disagrees with them, well, then you're at a complete impasse. Like, well, okay, you guys hash it out, and you tell me who's right and why. Uh, yeah, it's I don't understand how that can progress, and we're seeing that as sort of the move to like the whole indigenization of the universities too, where they're looking at these other ways of knowing that are based on sort of this indigenous knowledge that basically comes about to just a bunch of creation myths that we have for every sort of indigenous tribe that there has been, getting legitimized in scientific institutions because nobody wants to say that these are myths. it's we're really in a really strange spot.
It is this. I do see it as it is. There's like this mythological function at work here, which is like, um, I'd say that this appears to be like a rejection of the Western mythos, right? Which stems to the Enlightenment, which is the scientific, rational scientific, objectivist point of view. Which I'm not trying to say is entirely correct, but it's like it's hard to reject it.
Well, I mean,
But I
it's
mean,
literally that's literally what they're doing with that's the whole post-colonial theory method that they go about trying to decolonize everything, where Western science isn't valid because it can make planes fly. There's apparently other ways of knowing that are just as valid, that aren't Western, that are based on you know storytelling or
Right.
revealed truth and things like that. And these are things people can believe, but people are getting hired in universities as these indigenous scholars doing indigenous science, where it's just has nothing to do with science, but it's all under this guise of we need to decolonize universities and the curriculum and everything.
I don't even understand the arguments there, and I'm really not hungry for the knowledge base that because so I like study
It's
people.
nuts, I'll tell you that.
It's James Lindsay gets two feathers in his hat and a great big old scraping bow too, because it's like his I studied the Marxists briefly, but I couldn't hold my nose nearly as well as he can. And it's like he is just digging down into the bones of Marcuse's work and doing yeoman's work. It's amazing to me
Yeah,
because it's just so distasteful to my opinions. And I'm like, okay, I can't hardly
yeah.
read it.
I've tried to read some of that stuff, and it just bores me to tears. So I applaud that James Lindsay and people like Helen Pluckrose
Oh yeah,
have done that dirty work for all of us. So
right.
we don't have to, even though I still try to read some of the classics and things like that, but
Just
man,
try to understand. It's useful to understand it, and I think that it's good to have someone else digest it so that they can spout it out in a more unintelligible format that is more succinct. How about that?
yeah. So they're both very good. They're both amazing at doing that, Helen and James.
Well, that's what I think is funny. Is like he's a mathematician, and
Yeah,
Helen's
he approaches it very mathematically, like yeah, I think that is actually helping him. He's super analytic, so he's able to just sort of break things apart, which is the opposite of what a lot of the critical theorists do. They're just so wishy-washy, where someone coming at it from a pure math background can just shred it apart. That's why the Sokal hoax back in the day, he was coming at it from a mathematics, physics point of view, but he still had that mathematics background, uh, where they're able to tear these ideologies apart, basically, because they can see where people are sort of intellectually dividing by zero, where they're just doing
right.
doing this little jujitsu move to logic, where then they can just create any output that they want to. And I've talked to people like Helen Joyce, who has a hard math background too. She's really good at calling out all the BS in gender ideology, because they're dividing by zero logically, even if they don't know they are, and that's how they're just sort of creating all these, uh, arriving at these insane conclusions.
It's alchemy at work,
It
right?
is. It's big time.
Which is what I heard someone talking about alchemy, and I don't remember who it was, but it's like this operational success is the base of alchemy without regard to anything else.
Yeah,
And so we say this, it's been remarkably successful operation. This hasn't it, this critical methodology.
it has. It gives people anything they want. They can just The wildest dreams can come true if you just believe it and chant it enough. That's literally what they're doing. I'm doing my best not to like straw man these positions, but
Right?
at some point you just gotta kind of call it how it is, and that's what they're doing.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Best Medicine Podcast with Bradley H. Werrell, DO. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe below, either over there or over there. Also, if you're interested in a medical consultation with myself, there's also information below.